Hey everybody, welcome to DadsDen of Pop Culture. We're taking a look at a film, came out in 1966 today, called Modesty Blaise, based loosely on the comic strip of the same name, created by Peter O'Donnell and Jim Holdaway. Now, Peter O'Donnell is one of the writers of this story, but according to him, not a lot of what he wrote actually ended up on the screen. Stanley Dubins also did some writing on it, so bear in mind, this film may not really be a good adaptation of Modesty Blaise. Now, I've never gotten to read the comic strip, so I don't know. So I'm not going to be comparing it to the comic strip. But it is, in my opinion, a pretty fun movie. So let's go ahead. We'll bring down the poster. We'll bring up the slideshow. We're going to go through the film. We're going to look at those visuals I was talking about. We're going to look at the plot. We're going to look at the characters, chat a little bit about it, and we'll see what you think when we get to the end. Now, at some point, I will be putting a spoiler warning up as we get a little bit more into the story. So, we begin with Monica Vitti, who plays Modesty Blaise in this film, asleep. And then we see that where she's sleeping is this sort of circular bedroom on a rotating platform. So right off the bat, you're getting a little hint as to what you can expect with this film. It's going to be, well, a little camp, a little bit surreal. It's going to, like I said, be visually interesting. So her manservant arrives with breakfast, and here you see a better shot of what her bedroom looks like. So breakfast is served, and while she's eating, she's having her horoscope read to her by her manservant there. It tells her to try something new and not take a partner for granted. Good advice. And then paper kind of shoots out of her computer, and it's this list of her accessories. No, her lovers. So we're already kind of building this thing up. Like I said, we've got the visuals. Okay, it's going to be a little bit flirtatious, a little bit sexy. It's going to be a little bit weird. Light comedy, very mod. Okay, so this is what you're going to get through the whole thing. So she calls the computer an idiot, and it spits a bunch of cards out at her. She's laughing, and then we go into the musical intro with the theme song, Modesty, Modesty, and you kept we're going to get that music going all through it. So our stars, Monica Vitti, and of course Terence, kneel before Zod. Stamp. He's not going to be very Zoddy in this one. He plays her very erstwhile ally Willie, very dangerous with the knife. Great character, really, and he plays it very, very well. Dirk Bogarde is our special guest villain for this movie. There's our title, very 1966 kind of opening in terms of graphics and music, etc. Screenplay by Evan Jones from a story by Peter O'Donnell, as I said, who says not a lot of what he wrote actually ended up in this thing, and Stanley Dubins. And this is important. When they roll through all these credits, I'm looking up, who these people are, what they've done. Mostly people sort of on the fringe, sort of in the underground. And that really colors the kind of movie that we're going to get in this thing. But all very talented. And so we get the whole deal with the credits rolling through here as it kind of goes around this building. It's visually interesting. It's not the most amazing intro I've ever seen, but that's fine. So now we're on the streets of Amsterdam, very striking colors. We see this man smoking his pipe. Who might he be? And, from the hat, from his stride, from the umbrella that he's carrying, kind of suggests he's an Englishman. So he comes across this mime, as one often does, and he passes a note, some kind of information to the mime. The mime then takes this note down an alley, seems to be populated by show people. He looks very nervous, and he's soon followed by the guy we see there in the mirror. Nice little mirror shot, by the way. And we see him when he comes out of there, he does this little bit of prestidigitation. So he's a magician, perhaps. So what exactly is going on? Well, we flip back to the Englishman and a very English voiceover. Modesty Blaise? Why do we need Modesty Blaise? We have our best man on the job. Well, that's their best man. He approaches a building and very carefully with the umbrella rings the doorbell, and their best man is no longer on the job. Now, this scene is handled somewhat comedically, again, somewhat campy. So again, it kind of gives you an idea of what to expect and the level of tension that you could expect from the movie. This is not going to be a James Bond thriller. It's sort of playing with the James Bond tropes. So we then drop in on a meeting of, again, very British old men reacting to the news, of the agent's passing. Well, that's a bit of bad luck. And one of them has a solution. We've no alternative. We must have Modesty Blaise. This is Sir Gerald Terence, played by Harry Andrews. He is chief of the British Secret Service. And he will be Modesty's liaison through this film. Well, her boss, you won't be able to persuade her, Terence. She's retired with a large fortune. She's going to marry. Well, he does persuade her, and soon she's getting briefed on the nation of Masara, which she's told is too small to even be on the map, which she then reminds them it's about the size of England and Wales. So we're getting kind of the British imperial snobbery here. And it's going to turn out she knows exactly what place they're talking about. Well, the British gave it back to the local population 15 years ago. They're not impressed with what's happened since. So a mockery of British imperialism is definitely a part of this film. 1966. It's being done by folks who were on the fringe in the underground. It kind of all makes sense, but it's fine. So there's a revolution by the Sheikh's second cousin, a man who claims to be a trade unionist, right-wing, of course, from Terence. So it's kind of funny because so you're also getting the sort of British left versus right between these two guys. So Modesty wants to know, well, what do you want me to do? Well, the Brits support Sheikh Abu Tahir, who's going to be played in this film by Clive Revill. In exchange for an oil concession, they're sending him diamonds worth £50 million. But somebody is trying to stop the shipment. They need to know who is doing it. She tells them, if you trust me and give me all the information I need, fine. But if you deceive me, I may take the diamonds myself. And they know that's no bluff, although there's a little bit of, British establishment arrogance and, of course she's not going to be able to take those. So her first call upon getting this mission and agreeing to it, and they are paying her for it, is to her erstwhile companion, Willie Garvin, played again by Terence Stamp. He's a little bit in the middle of things, but never too busy for Princess, as he calls her, and he's the only one who calls her that. His date angrily dresses and leaves, and we do get a little moment of him as she leaves the door. He kind of tosses this knife at this, it's kind of a mannequin or something. So you get an idea of his knife throwing skills. That's going to be important as we go through the film. Next, we see Modesty and Terence visiting the Sheikh. Now, Terence is warning her not to be too familiar as a woman when visiting Muslims. He's trying to make sure she understands all this stuff, only to discover that the Sheikh is her foster father and an old friend. He announces Modesty as my son, Modesty, who is also my daughter. So she didn't really need to be warned, and maybe Terence's idea of what these Arabs are like is not 100%, accurate. And you definitely get the trope here of the recently wealthy Arabs because of oil. Back in like the 40s and 50s, you got a lot of that with Texans. Well, really even going even to the 60s as well. Kind of a big thing as, the nouveau riche, so to speak. So we get a little data dump on how these two met. And when they're alone, he asks her, who is the enemy? She doesn't know yet. And he proclaims that there is only one man who would dare steal from Abu Tahir. And we're going to now see that man. It is Gabriel, a criminal mastermind, maybe Modesty's equal, maybe even better, played by Dirk Bogarde. to perfection. He has just arrived home from some kind of a trip on his boat, and he is announced by his accountant and major domo, McWhirter, also played by Clive Revill, so he gets a double role in this film. And his arrival is accompanied by organ music being played by a monk. It looks like it was once a monastery. It's now been taken over by him peacefully. We don't know. So this whole segment, you get a really nice look at the art direction on this film. It is a film of moments and of visuals far more than it is of plot, also of eccentric characters. That's really the heart of the movie, and that's what you're going to enjoy if you're watching it. This is dear Clara Fothergill, played by Rosella Falk. She is Gabriel's psychopathic bodyguard and security chief, and oh my goodness, so there are a couple scenes with Clara in this film. Very impressive. Again, look at this interior. I'm going to be reviewing the French film Fantômas pretty soon, which came out, I want to say, in either 64 or 65. You get a similar mod pop decadence in the look of that thing. You also get it in Batman, frankly, from 1966. So this is sort of the currency. This is the youth. This is the new. This is what's hot, what's happening, what's cool. It was a fun time for the visual arts, honestly. And here's another great shot. As Gabriel tells of a dinner party he attended in Scotland in which he was the topic, though none there knew who he really was, which actually sounds a little bit like Fantômas. But we're setting up his character through this whole thing. Brilliant, decadent, narcissistic. Also, one thing to note here, and you can kind of see it in this frame, he's usually drinking from oversized glasses. Now, is this important? Well, it may have something to do with his ego and all that, but it's also just a great visual splash, as you can see from this shot, looking through his glass and the liquid at the monastery up on the hill, or part of the monastery up on the hill. And during this, Fothergill demands to be given the clown that gave them away. Gabriel promised. He practically promised. Now McWhirter lets him know what their cash balance looks like. Gabriel tells him to produce up to £50,000 for Modesty Blaise. Is she with us? No, alas, against us once again. So he's already aware that she's involved, a step ahead of the good guys, etc. And he's going to be a step ahead of people for most of the film. So the whole scene, again, visually interesting, does a nice job of introducing who these characters are and what they're up to. Let's throw the spoiler sign up now that we have actually met all of our characters. So while McWhirter is going over accounts, we get another huge glass that he's drinking from, and you can kind of see next to it the very small glass that McWhirter has, so this could be an ego thing as well. And while they're discussing this very calmly, Gabriel is watching as Fothergill deals with the clown, who is transported to the island in a small wicker trunk. He's begging her. She's just enjoying the power and the dominance. And the way Gabriel's watching the whole ghastly spectacle is, he's kind of like maybe a little bit turned on by it. And from the look on her face while she's strangling the mime with her thighs, well, you get the idea. These are very weird and wicked people. Modesty and Willie are crooks. They steal money. But these folks are far, far worse. And then they watch as Fothergill throws the body off the cliff very casually. You hear McWhirter say, "Have you ever wondered about Mr. Fothergill?" From Gabriel, "I am Mr. Fothergill." Okay, some weird stuff going on with these folks. Back in Amsterdam, Terence is meeting with another agent while they're being observed by that guy in the background. We saw him before in the alley. And he's mentioning the diamond merchants of the city are not too big on Modesty Blaise being involved in this because of her history as a jewel thief. And now Modesty enters the film again, wearing a really stunning number. I think this is what very fashionable, wealthy people should use when their dogs need to wear one of those cones. Something a little more fashionable, I think. Well, it's explained in a voiceover from Terence. She's only in Amsterdam as a decoy. All right, so it sounds like they're already kind of betraying her, kind of using her. We get shots of the city, some more artful shots here too. You see the kind of reflection going on there. And you also find that she knows she's being followed. We see a few very similar shots. She gets on a canal boat to meet an unknown contact. And in voiceover, we discover that, again from Terence, she doesn't know where the diamonds are. We don't trust her. We just use her. So there it is, laid right out. And you remember what she said about that. That's going to come back to haunt them. And it also happens that this boat, this little tour boat, passes by a ship called Tiboria, on which the diamonds are being transported. And we do see one of the bad guys is already on the boat. So again, Gabriel is ahead of everybody on this one. Okay. Well, it wouldn't be a real good espionage type film if we didn't get an assassination attempt. So as the boat passes through a very narrow channel, a man raises a fishing rod with a small mine attached to it, which our heroine spots, but too late to do anything. But before it can explode, a knife flashes out from the side, cuts the rope, it goes down into the water, explodes there, and we see that Willie Garvin is now in Amsterdam and looking after the princess. So after the explosion, he gets on this bike, goes to this house, walks up this staircase. Again, great shots in this thing. It's just a fun movie to watch. It just looks really good, if nothing else. At the same time, Modesty is handed a postcard with a message as she disembarks, has this address on it. As she walks away, she passes this poster. Now, I couldn't get a really good shot, but you see the name Paco up there. And down in the corner, you see a picture of that mime, that clown, that was strangled by Miss Fothergill. Or Mrs. Fothergill, I should say. I'm going to get that right. Well, that night, Modesty goes to the address on the postcard. Kind of looks like a garage. Nearly pushes the doorbell. Remember how that went before. But hesitates and instead pulls out some keys. She enters and climbs a staircase and sneaks into this room, pauses, removes her sunglasses, takes a look around. You see, very eclectic in the decor, like everything else in the movie. She finds, she's looking behind the curtains, and then she finds these dolls, one of which looks like her. So does she know this place? Does she know who lives here? Again, we're going for visual interest here. You see the orbs and all that. Just a cool shot, just cool art direction throughout. She finds a gun under the hi-fi, I think she puts it back even. We get a scene change now. There's that poster again, a nightclub, people entering, and we see a magician on the phone. We hear Willie Garvin's name. They know Willie is in town. We see the man who is stalking Modesty being made up as a clown to replace the one that was lost. So Garvin is in the club looking for leads, looking for canaries to sing, as they say. We see the magic show beginning with the introduction of the beautiful assistant. Willie has an evil smirk on his face. And when the second assistant is introduced, Nicole, she starts when she sees Willie. So, okay, there's recognition there. And this kind of wave of recognition and fear and worry goes through the magician and then to the first assistant. Very well shot moment in the film. The show begins. Willie watches with disinterest. And they begin the best trick of the 20th century, walking through the crowd with eggs, cracking them, spilling the contents into people's drinks. Kind of odd. Not sure what they're really up to. But Nicole approaches Willie's table, and we see a man mark one of the eggs with this X. And as Nicole passes, Willie takes a hold of her. How's it going, love? Willie, come and tell me later. I'm at 6 Plumstrom. Something like that. And the mime follows up and moves Nicole along. So he's made the connection with this person, thinks he can get some information from her. Back to Modesty in that apartment. Close up of her legs in the fishnet stockings. So yes, they definitely are going for sex appeal in this. She spots some Modesty Blaise magazines on the couch. She's waiting for somebody, and as she gets up to walk about, the lights suddenly go out. So she's on high alert. A man walks through the door. While she hides, he tries to turn on the lights and fails. So who knocked out the lights? Obviously wasn't him. And then she sneezes, and that begins this fight scene through the apartment between these two. And it finally ends when they recognize each other. And somehow now she's in a comic accurate costume with the dark hair. So again, kind of surreal. It doesn't necessarily make sense, but she's in it. So they play with this thing quite a bit. So they do know each other. Their meeting 3 years ago had them on different sides, and she's counted the minutes since then. And they speak. He asks what she did to the lights. Nothing. I thought you. Now they both duck. Uh-oh, what's... But it actually just turns out to be a blown fuse, which is a nice touch. Kind of gives you an idea of who these people are, what they do for a living, that they're a little shocked by the lights, but they kind of know what it might mean. And you get this funny comic strip moment here. As they begin to fool around a little bit, Paul notices there's no zipper on the costume. He goes, how do you get it off? And Modesty doesn't really know either. She's like, so we get mentions of the comic strip, in the movie. We see her taking on the appearance of the comic character for a while. So it's kind of like, yeah, it's a little surreal in that respect. So Modesty has her rendezvous. Nicole now arrives at Willie's, and he already has another visitor. Okay, back to Modesty. Well, how did you get it on? As she's snacking, she asks them how they're sending the diamonds. He says, by Royal Air Force aircraft from Schiphol Airport in Amsterdam, 10 o'clock tomorrow night. Okay, that's what she needs to know. Or is it what she needs to know? We know these guys are not being completely honest. Back to Willie, and I swear you could play this thing with the sound off and just looking at it. It's really great. He wants to know who Paco takes his orders from. I don't know. A bird, right? English slang? No, in this case, it's not English slang. It's actually this bird cage. What we do here is we see the other assistant speaking to Gabriel's headquarters, I believe to Fothergill, through a mechanical bird. And she says Modesty is in bed with the Englishman, Willie is in bed with Nicole. And we get this. It's a weird scene. What can I tell you? It just is. But their conversation ends up getting her angry, and she starts throwing heavy glass objects at him. So he carries her into the bedroom, which is distracting enough for a sneak attack through a window and the front door. The two would-be assassins creep in as Paul goes to look for food in the kitchen, and Modesty slinks into the bathroom. Paul is taken out pretty easily. Modesty is then taken by surprise in the tub. And Paco, the magician, reports back. They have Modesty. Does Gabriel want Garvin? You're a fool, Paco, of course. So, runs a tight ship, Gabriel does. So the thugs force Modesty to make a call to Willie. He's threatening her with this weird sculpture that they have that's kind of got little pointy things on it. Willie, of course, is really thrilled to get the call because she always knows, like when he's up to something. Gets the address, and he's off, though, immediately. Seems suspicious, though. And you see that they take this opportunity to show Willie's devotion to Modesty, the jealousy it invokes, his interest in this woman, but he's also, he's going. Like, there's no doubt about it. And he instructs her to try to, pump Paco for more information about what's going on. So the trap is set. Willie heads off by boat because it's the mid-60s, and that's really cool. Drifts up silently to another boat, ties off. It turns out Terence is waiting for him, fills him in on the trap that is being set. These two are going to come to the rescue. This is a nice scene. Terence goes in the front door, calm, very British, while Willie comes up the back way. A knife strikes the man in the picture there. Willie laughs. The other man turns and is shot in the back by Terence with his umbrella gun. So very 60s, very spy, very cool. You get the idea. They untie the prisoners while Terence uses one of the thugs' bodies to motion his pal up from the street while, and then when that guy arrives, Modesty takes him out. So they've dealt with this initial threat. Back to Gabriel's place, where they've heard the news of the failure of Paco, and they must decide what to do with Nicole. You know, McWhirter, that woman has no sense of the value of human life. He's talking about Fothergill, who obviously just wants to kill everybody. So he says, send a cable. Dear Paco, if the girl is alive tomorrow night, you won't be. It's a bit crude. Paco will understand, I suppose so. He reads the comic strips. So again, a reference to the comic strips here. So then we get this kind of a nightmarish shot. It's this rundown building covered with dolls. And we hear the sound of carnival music in the background. And this becomes this action set piece as Modesty and Willie are set upon by a gang of thugs. So it's pretty nice. There is action in the film. There is some fighting, little car chasing going on. So you do get that, as well as the camp and the comedy, etc., and the surreal stuff. So the music is coming from this organ grinder who watches while Nicole waits. She hurries into the carnival, and the organ grinder follows her, and she soon discovers that she's surrounded by Gabriel's men. At this point, Modesty and Willie enter the scene looking for Nicole, but they're too late. Willie takes off after the murderer. Modesty rushes to Nicole. Her last word is, Gabriel. And then the organ grinder appears. Modesty flees him and two others, hiding in a house of ill repute. You notice she's instantly in another outfit with a different wig on. It's kind of like her special ability in this is to change her appearance at the drop of a hat. But Willie has found the thugs himself. He is now engaged with them. And then she, arrives and gets involved too. Willie tosses her a knife and then pulls another one. So he has to, tosses one to her. So she has to, he grabs another. So this dude's loaded with knives. And, you can kind of guess from this shot who ultimately wins. And it ends with Willie disarming the last thug, watching him run away for a moment, and then throwing the knife into him. It's really a more serious fight scene than you might expect from this movie in terms of the amount of, there's some real death in this thing, and you do get that sort of cold way that Willie takes people out. So that night at the airfield, you see the jet there being fueled up and readied. That's going to supposedly deliver the diamonds to the Sheikh earlier than 10 o'clock, so Modesty would not be tempted to take the plane and the diamonds. And we do get, though, a line, are you afraid she'll steal those empty boxes? So, okay, yeah, this is a fake. This is not really how they're being moved. And we get this great shot of the airplane in flight over the mountains. Pilots contact control, estimate Beirut in 2 hours, and Gabriel is listening in to every word, and then the exquisite torture of waiting to push the button that will launch the rocket and take the airplane down. Now, that guy in the background there with the shirt off, who's sort of like Mrs. Fothergill's boy toy, kind of reminds me of Rocky from the Rocky Horror Picture Show, and I'm almost positive it's not the same person. In fact, I am positive, but it still, that's the first thing that popped into my mind. And it has some of those same kind of weird vibes. Well, Gabriel's not tortured for long, launches the missile, and the men who sent those pilots to their death with empty boxes don't appear to be tortured at all by what happened to them. So we have 3 factions in this movie, and none of them are technically good. We got Willie and Modesty and the Sheikh, easily the least bad of the 3. You then also have British intelligence, who really doesn't care that much about human life. And we have Gabriel and his people, who definitely don't care about human life. So it's kind of this competition between bad guys in this film. So back home after a day of work, Paul gives Modesty a little kiss, and she knew the plane was a blind the entire time, and they have some champagne, and Paul is knocked out by the drug that she put in the champagne. So it's kind of her nice way of saying, yeah, I'm kind of done with you people. We then see Modesty and Willie at a flying club. There's a plane. Her manservant, Wong, is waiting for him. So off to the Tiboria and the diamonds. And that morning, Terence arrives at Paul's flat and finds a note. Sorry, darling, you broke your part of the bargain. I now consider myself a free agent. We fooled Gabriel, and now we're lumbered with Modesty Blaise. Heaven protect my pension. So again, not really too worried about human life in this. So we get to see Modesty and Willie having a cocktail, flying over the ship, doing a little recon. And Gabriel, not fooled, the rocket cost $1 million, but now they have the benefit of surprise. So in other words, yeah, they knew that the airplane was fake too, but now the other side thinks that they didn't know it was fake. And he has a report that Modesty and Willie overflew the ship. So again, one step ahead of everybody. Willie figures that Gabriel has it figured out, so he figures they should just stick close to Gabriel. Maybe Gabriel isn't a step ahead of Modesty Blaise, or maybe it doesn't matter that he's a step ahead of Modesty Blaise. Fothergill, meanwhile, is on Gabriel's boat. Some of his men are learning to dive, while Gabriel and McWhirter luncheon at the castle. It might seem that these are extraneous moments, but they do forward the story and, again, establish the character of the people involved, seeing what they're up to, seeing how they act, etc. It reinforces that throughout. Well, the second of the divers fails, and they must have somebody who can crack into the strongbox on the ship. Gabriel knows of 2 people who could do it, himself and Willie Garvin. So we break to Modesty and Willie driving through the mountains. They stop, share an ice cream, and have a little musical number about their partnership and their lack of taking it to the next step, shall we say. It's kind of a fun little moment. It's a little odd, but this is a campy movie. It ends with them back on the road, and if Gabriel doesn't attack us soon, we'll have to have lunch. So they're putting themselves out as bait. They know he needs them, so they're just waiting for him to finally act. Well, they don't have to wait long, but it actually turns out to be Terence and Paul who corner them with some cars, and they're going to take them back to London. But you see the little hats they're wearing? Well, those are kind of important. They get in the cars, and they have these cigarette packs. And the cigarette packs are like gas bombs. So they set them off, and then these hats pull down over their faces to become gas masks. So again, they're definitely a step ahead of British intelligence. And we next see them. They clearly have been trying to attract Gabriel's attention through the area. They're on this patio in what looks like the aftermath of a storm. Why? I have no idea exactly that they chose that moment, but it just looks really good on film. And just you see those 2, reacting to each other. The next morning, Modesty is awakened by the ring of a phone. Now, you notice that tattoo of a scorpion on her thigh, not from the comics. They decided on that their own. It does play into a line of dialogue later. She walks out onto the balcony of the hotel room, naked. No, you don't get to see anything. And it is Gabriel on the other end making contact. He's on a ship in the harbor. He offers a flag of truce and a delicious breakfast. Well, I mean, who could deny that? So an hour later, a launch takes her to the ship. By the way, I just think that boat is absolutely gorgeous, and I wanted to show it. I love those things. Kind of like the one they had in the third Indiana Jones movie, where they had the whole thing with the boats and anyways. So they're walking through this yacht. You see these women dancing and stuff. There's a pause while Modesty dances as well. Everything, of course, is very posh, but also very swinging, the new decadence of the mid-1960s. And back to the giant drinking vessel for Gabriel. Also notable that he adds beer to his champagne, while she adds orange juice to hers. Very cool. They compliment one another over past jobs that they pulled. There's no fear from either, but there is some tension. He calls her a suffragette. She calls him a psychopath. He proposes. They become partners on this diamond caper. As partners, she can trust him, at which point Modesty is knocked unconscious by a thump on the skull from Mrs. Fothergill. She awakens the next morning on a ship and is dragged to a meeting with her charming hosts, as you can see there. Willie is also there, although he may have had more fun getting there than Modesty. He's with that blonde assistant we saw earlier. Gabriel has made his move, and Willie is going to be pressed into getting the diamonds. If he doesn't, Mrs. Fothergill is happy to tell them that Modesty will be killed. Who's the bird with the beady eyes? It's interesting the way decadence and sexual liberation are seen from different angles from Modesty and Willie versus Gabriel and his crew. Now, Modesty and Willie are not wholesome or anything, but they're not quite as creepy as the other two. So you kind of get the, this is what was going on in the 1960s as people started breaking down the rules, and then through the 1970s started maybe learning why some of those rules were there in the first place, that it wasn't just, because of uptight old ladies who didn't want people to have fun. Speaking of which, both of them are strip searched, with Mrs. Fothergill taking an especial interest in that tattoo of Modesty's, the scorpion. She says, "I have a sting." Well, British intelligence looks on at that boat, convinced in their unerring superiority and whatnot, and sees that Gabriel's yacht is out there, apparently with Gabriel aboard, sunning himself. And so they figure, okay, well, we're good. They're not moving. They're not doing anything. And as they watch, the Tiboria arrives in port. A submersible, super cool in 1960s, is lowered in the water alongside a band of frogmen, also very cool in the 60s. That includes Willie. The submarine is attached to the hull of the Tiboria magnetically, and Willie enters up through that submersible. And so the rest of them make their way in. They get into the strong room. Meanwhile, the Tiboria's captain calls the Brits to let him know another ship, the Andronicus, has been paralleling their course. They order him to uncover the guns and double check the strong room, which they do. Just as Willie is leaving through a new hole in the hull, everything seems fine, although they do find a fish that shouldn't be there. So what's good? But they don't see the holes. They're covered up. They've been fooled. So the job is through. The wooden yacht that we saw earlier carries Gabriel and his captives back to his island as Terence realizes he has been duped and the diamonds have been stolen. Willie and Modesty are marched up to the monastery, to that courtyard we saw before, in handcuffs, where their fate is to be decided. We get this little speech from Gabriel. "I'm not a desiccated calculating machine like you, McWhorter, nor yet a roaring psychopath like you, dear lady. I'm the villain of the piece, and I have to condemn you to death." And Modesty says, "But I am the heroine. Don't I get away?" Perhaps. What does that mean? Willie is taken to the tower, and Modesty is taken to this cell which Gabriel has prepared for her, and immediately they begin preparing their escapes. And perhaps Modesty is going to receive some help as she finds this card on this seemingly errant staircase in the middle of the room. Okay. She climbs, she opens a trapdoor, and it leads to Gabriel's room, where he fans himself waiting. She kind of lets out this little yipe and closes the trapdoor, and he smirks. And then reemerges. "Yes, this is the way out," he says. "The way out is to join him. To destroy her would be to destroy himself. Together they could inherit the earth. The terms: we share the diamonds, and you eliminate Garvin. I'll eliminate Mrs. Fothergill." There is truly no honor among these thieves. She shakes her head no and goes back into her cell. The narcissist does not take this well. He orders McWhorter to have Mrs. Fothergill meet him on the terrace in 1 hour's time, presumably to execute his prisoners. Down below, though, Modesty has seduced that guard, Fothergill's boy toy, into the cell. He is quickly dispatched. And Willie is well on his way to escape as well. We get a little bit more seduction to steal the outfit from that old monk. I mean, look, he's an old monk. You can see where that might get his attention. And that helps her extract Willie. And the team is now back together, and we're now setting up for the finale. She pulls off of Willie's back this false patch of skin that's hiding all the tools that they need. So that's how they smuggled things in. Like I said, they knew they were going to be captured. They were prepared. And while this is happening, Gabriel reaches the terrace. This is an important establishing shot for the fight scene that's about to happen. That wooden structure you kind of see on the far right-hand side of the image is what's really going to be important. So the two begin assembling whatever they snuck into the complex. And it turns out initially to be this inflatable bird that's really a transmitter. It's going to bring the cavalry in to rescue our heroes. And this is the cavalry. A full-on Arab assault is now on its way to Gabriel's Island. And there's a little bit of weakness in this sequence because it does drag on a bit. Probably could have been shaved down and still had an equal impact. It's more comedic than it is action-packed. So Modesty and Willie now begin to make their way out of the castle, with Willie posing as a guard. To get past one guard, they assemble a bow made from Willie's belt and some items carried by Modesty. It's very cool. McWhirter now reaches the terrace, where he and Gabriel shall go over the books. We're not only showing that the bad guys are unaware of the escape, but they're also putting them where they need to be for the next bit. Modesty and Willie are now in this castle. They've grabbed the box containing the diamonds. Willie motions that he's going to use a winch outside to lower them down. Great pose here from Monica Vitti. Important in these movies to pose without looking like you're posing. You'll see this with a lot of film. There's motion, and then an actor will stop. And maybe he's talking, and maybe he doesn't talk when he stops. Maybe he's not talking, and he does talk. But the point is, it moves, and then a stop, and you get to actually look at the scene, and what's going on. So, at any rate, in the process, though, of getting out, she runs into Mrs. Fothergill. So we get a fight. Now, it may not be the greatest choreography ever, but it has this absolutely brutal ending as Modesty manages to get a rope around her neck and Willie hoists her up. And this is why you needed Gabriel on the terrace, because you see her in the background. You can just make it out. It's very easy to see in the movie when things are moving. It was difficult for me to get a good still shot of it, but he doesn't notice her at first. The body actually goes up and down a couple times before he notices. But eventually he does. And then the alert is out. The platinum wig comes off, and they go in search of the duo and the diamonds, of course, too. And they do manage to pin them down on the mountainside. Now, there's another quibble here I had. Bogarde, when he's shooting his gun, throws his bullets rather than firing them. It is a sign that the movie, despite having some action in it, was not really made by people who knew how to do action. It ain't James Bond, but it works in the context of the film, so I didn't really have a problem with it. But you do notice that in some actors, instead of holding a gun steady and shooting, they do this, like they got to put a little English on the bullet, with a little twist of the wrist while they fire. So it's looking bad for our anti-heroes until the cavalry arrives. And of course, I mean this literally. The Arabs storm the complex. They capture Gabriel and his army. Again, it goes on a little bit long. We get another song from Willie and Modesty. If you've ever wanted to hear Terence Stamp do a purposely bad Bing Crosby impression, you are in luck if you watch this film. Again, this is more about the comedy than the action, though. And there's plenty of style, and there's a lot of spectacle in it. It reminds me, actually, of the Phantom films that were done from 64 to 66 in that comedy, action, spectacle. It's all there. Very mod, very European. You also get the moment of McWhirter complaining that they're wasting bullets. He's still being the accountant that he was born to be. And while I think they could have trimmed it there are some really fun shots. You have these Arabs holding this flag with all these people down below, all these bodies. But then at one point, these other guys run up and take the flag, but those Arabs still are posing the whole time. So it is kind of funny. It's kind of enjoyable. So in the aftermath, Terence, British intelligence, shows up, lets the minister know with his little radio umbrella that the mission is accomplished, and they think they've won. But they do discover that the diamonds are not there. So back at the Shakes, we have kids watching oil drip from this pipe. Willie is taking what could be a very dangerous bath in that part of the world. It's a milk bath too, which I don't get that. And we see Gabriel taking in some sun. Modesty is enjoying all of her diamonds. And the bad guys, who aren't as bad as the other bad guys, sort of win the day. But what's this? McWhorter freeing Gabriel. Is there to be a sequel? Well, no. There wasn't going to be a sequel as the movie failed to break even and actually lost money. The final product, apparently, like I said, now very different from the screenplay that O'Donnell wrote. But his screenplay was the basis of a graphic novel produced by DC Comics in the late 90s. So, what do we think about this film? Dude, I enjoy it a great deal. Just the visuals are fun. It's a fun movie. It's got action. It's got comedy. It's a little bit off. It's a little camp, and I like that kind of stuff. I like stuff to be a little bit weird, honestly. Again, I couldn't tell you what kind of a adaptation it is of Modesty Blaise, the comic strip, but from O'Donnell's words, you figure it's not a great one. This comes out in 1966. It's the same year we get Batman on TV in the U.S., maybe the greatest year of American TV ever in terms of lasting pop cultural, items, stuff that we're still dealing with today. As I said, the third Phantom film comes out this year. You got the Bond copycats and parodies that are in full swing. The Silencers with Dean Martin as Matt Helm comes out in 1966, which also changed the source character quite a bit. In Like Flint comes out the next year. As does The President's Analyst, which is another awesome film, stars James Coburn. So this is very much of its time. And if you like all those kind of movies, I think you should give this one a try. Fun film. Honestly, pretty well acted. Bogarde's fantastic as the villain. Father Gill is really friggin' scary. I dig this movie, so I do give it the 2 thumbs up. You might want to give it a try. If you've seen this film, I'd love to hear what you think about it in the comments. Let me know. If you enjoyed this little review of Modesty Blaise, please give it a thumbs up. Maybe think of subscribing to this channel where I talk about all sorts of pop culture. Maybe share with a friend. That would be very groovy. But in the meantime, God bless everybody. Please be kind to one another. Have a little bit of fun. Watch Modesty Blaise. And I will see you hopefully again soon in Dad's Den of pop culture. Bye-bye.